Welcome back, everyone. Pal Pondron Weather here. In this update, we're going to be tracking several storm systems in the week ahead that's going to bring some damaging winds, large hail, and even some flooding rains over the course of the coming week. So let's break down the details for you in this update and start off with the overall water vapor imagery. You can actually see up here across portions of the Carolinas, that is your low pressure center, what we've been tracking over the coming days. That brought all the heavier rains for them. But further south back into the Gulf of Mexico, we have a new little area of low pressure that's forming down in that region, and that's going to be traversing across Florida in the coming week, and eventually likely going to be going into the areas off the southeast coast again by the time we get later into the weekend. But you can see where the dry slot is. It's actually filtered back into West Texas. They're going to be starting to dry out, but further to the north, that's where the instability is going to be across the Texas Panhandle and across portions of the High Plains regions. You can see where the lift vorticities are going to be later on this afternoon. So the first one is right here off the California coast. That's going to bring all the cooler type conditions, but then the activated dry line is going to really heat up in the afternoon. That's when the atmosphere should start to overturn, and we should start to see strong to severe thunderstorms start to break out across these the dry line. And then there's that other area, low pressure off the California coast, and then we have that little disturbance that went across Texas yesterday. Now that's really going to be impacting areas into East Texas with, these steering currents are just very light in these areas. So once you get bubbled up action in the heat of the afternoon, it can produce some pretty, high wind gust and some heavier rains just in a very short amount of time. So if we take a look at the satellite picture, you can see what we're talking about. So we have that action across Florida. That's going to be in the heat of the afternoon. That's where we have to be concerned about, really along the I-20 corridor further south. And then there's the boundary across the middle of the country. That's where things are going to be heating up across this region, and they're going to be strong to severe. In fact, here's the breakdown with that slight risk in place today. This is not like a tornadic type setup, but we definitely have to be concerned about stronger cells bubbling up with some damaging winds. I think the wind is going to be the highest impact from these storms. You're talking 65, 70. I would even roll out some 75-mile-per-hour wind gust later on this afternoon into the early evening time frame. And they can also be some larger hail producers as well. So definitely be on high alert in that region. So if we take a look at the radar depiction on what that might look like as we get to the late afternoon, early evening time frame, there's where the setups are going to be, right across these regions, just on the north side of that low pressure center, traversing down across where the activated dry line is going to be. And that's the setup for today. And then once we go into tomorrow, again, we have that little low pressure center down here with the complements of kind of a stalled frontal boundary across Florida. This is typically what you see maybe this time of year. This is why they call the wet season. You get these type systems that just kind of sit there, and once we heat up the atmosphere does start to turn over with the diurnal type heating thunderstorms. It definitely starts to dry out somewhat in Texas, across Oklahoma as we get into Wednesday. But the setups again is going to be across the plains regions with renewed activity into the heat of the afternoon. And that's exactly where we find it, into the Texas Panhandle, across eastern portions of Colorado, back into western portions of Kansas. So this is the area that we have to be concerned about. This is the day on Wednesday as they get, bubble up in the heat of the afternoon into the early evening time frame. Not really a tornadic type setup, but large hail, damaging winds type setup into the day on Wednesday. And if we break down Tuesday and Wednesday where the rain will be, we can see where the action is across the middle of the country, across the dry line regions, back into the high plains. Those are the areas that we have to be most concerned about over the next 2 days. So really, it's really complements of this ridging over the top. So we've got all those, you got the polar jet to the north, a lot less active, drier, sinking air. And then you've got that subtropical jet further south, a lot more activity, a little bit more lift down here in this region. And then obviously, if you got all the clouds and the rain around, that's going to keep these temperatures on the somewhat cooler side, or going into June time frame. That June 1st is already technically meteorology summer by then, and then it'll be feeling every bit of summer further to the north, because some of these areas up here in Canada, and especially across the Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley, into the Midwest regions, those areas could be topping out well into the 90s, if not even some record high temperatures. So if we take a look at some of these temperatures, where they unfold across June 1st timeframe, you can see kind of widespread 90s across the Midwest, across the Great Lakes regions. That's plenty well above average for them. And look at Phoenix, right? That's 91 degrees, 67 in Flagstaff. So that is definitely cooler air. And then you can see where the northwest flow is, right? So the northwest flow is your more cooler flow. And then underneath that ridge of high pressure, you're not going to, you're going to heat up in a big way. And then where that low pressure is off the Carolina coast, you're also on the cooler side. You'll be experiencing temperatures in the low 80s, if not in the 70s, kind of really all day long. But heading into your Friday time frame, this is where the lift mechanisms are, right? So you still got that lift mechanism down there into the Gulf of Mexico. That is an area of low pressure center that's just going to kind of meander over the coming days, bringing additional rain showers, Florida region, as we get into your Friday time frame. But then we have this again, this just very active subtropical jet stream further south that's going to pull these series of short waves across portions across the south and the southern plains. And then you're going to have a little more lift into the heat of the afternoon and create showers and thunderstorms. So if we extend it into next week, there's not anything from the National Hurricane Center as of right now saying, hey, this is going to form into a tropical type entity. But there's definitely areas of low pressure down there. And this is the probability on the latest European ensembles, about a 10 or 20% chance of this forming and possibly to a tropical type depression. Remember, hurricane season starts June 1st. So we've watched any and all these possibilities as we are now going to be into hurricane season. And this is just another area of low pressure that's going to have a lot of shear to contend with off into the Gulf of Mexico. But by the time we get into early next week, it's not going to have much shear to contend with. So yeah, chances are low, but definitely something to be, on the lookout for as we head into early next week. But before that, there's the setup for Friday. So we have renewed strength coming off the subtropical jet stream, renewed lift across the middle of the country, and higher dew points to tap into now. And that's going to overturn the atmosphere across the middle of the country. And that's where we're going to be seeing all the activity. And we're talking some very heavy rain really starting to set up. In fact, already an excessive rainfall estimates day 4 out there on Friday time frame back into portions of Montana, into Wyoming, all the way down across the plains regions. And this feeds right back into Oklahoma again, right back into the panhandle of Texas. And this is traversing northwest regions into the Texas regions with some very heavy rains as the renewed northwest flow type setups start to come back. So there's the temperatures on Friday, right? So where you got the northwest flow set up, you've got the active subtropical jet, that's the cooler, more unsettled conditions. Further north, you're under that ridge of high pressure. These are a lot of sinking air, a lot of well above average temperatures, and some of these could be some record high temperatures, especially when you're talking 15 to 20 degrees above average temperatures, what you typically see. And then where you have the low pressure center underneath you, obviously those are going to bring a lot of clouds, more rain showers, and you're going to be on the cooler side as well. So heading into Saturday, again, it just amplifies even more. So you got a little bit higher dew points to tap into. These dew points are going to be well into the 60s, if not in the 70s by then. It's not going to take much to wring out that type atmosphere, especially with the lift mechanism coming in out west. So yes, any type of heating is going to bubble up the atmosphere, is going to be able to overturn it in a big way and produce widespread showers and thunderstorms across this region into your day on your Saturday time frame. So as we transition and take a look where that low pressure is, by the time we head into Sunday, again, the ridging over the top, lowers the pressures underneath. And then, yeah, we find ourselves with the potential 1001 type millibar area of low pressure center by the time we head into this weekend. Again, off the southeast coast. That's why the European ensembles have it at about a 20% probability right now to form it into some sort of tropical type entity. So if you live in the Bahamas regions, back into Florida, off into portions of Georgia, across South Carolina and North Carolina, back into Virginia again, you kind of need to watch this system as we get into next weekend and see what's going to come out of this. And obviously I'll be updating it every step of the way on this channel. So, but if you broaden the picture out on Sunday and look at the northern hemisphere view, you can really get a true picture in what's happening, right? So you got that more active, subtropical jet stream coming off Hawaii that pulls in the active subtropical lows, more activity across these regions, cooler, more unsettled conditions. Further north, you got the ridge. So we've got the ridge to the north. There are going to be signs that this is going to back up. So this is going to be starting to back up. This won't be until late this upcoming weekend, but there are definitely signs that this ridge is going to start to retreating back more off into the Pacific Northwest and across the central US. And then that's going to open the door for kind of a backdoor trough up here into the Northeast. And that's going to bring a little bit more unsettled weather and cooler conditions for them. You can actually see it coming in by the time we get into, say, that Tuesday time frame of next week. So 7 days from now, it'll start happening. But between now and then, you've got a lot of drier type conditions and a lot of ridging and heat to contend with. But there are subtle changes in the longer term, what we're going to be seeing up into the Northeast, and that's going to bring a little bit more unsettled weather back in your region. At the same time, we'll be watching that low pressure center off the southeast coast, and we got, again, renewed lifts up down here across the portions of California, across the desert southwest, and then the middle of the country, you've got these little successful short waves. It's going to tap into the northwest flow. And then that's going to produce, again, more even wider spread type showers and thunderstorms across portions of North Texas, back into Central Texas, all of Oklahoma, getting into Arkansas, into Louisiana. And that'll be the day through the 6th through the 9th time frame. So again, we're starting to see a little bit more activity deeper at the end of the range. And then as we head into that 8th time frame, there's that low pressure. See, so you got the ridge starting to back up, right? So you got the ridge starting to back up. This won't be until 7 to 9 days from now. But there are definitely signs that this is going to happen. That backdoor trough is going to be able to sneak in. That's going to push the ridge further off into the Pacific Northwest. And that's going to bring in some more unsettled weather and cooler conditions for them heading in deeper into that first week of June time frame. If we kind of zoom in at on the surface map, by the time we get into that time frame around June the 8th, we see that area low pressure off the Jersey coastline there with heavier rains inland. So we could be looking at some heavier rains by then across New Jersey, across portions of upstate New York, getting into New York City, back into portions of Rhode Island, off the Cape Cod region, back into Maine, going into Massachusetts and Connecticut regions. All those areas are likely going to be inundated with heavier rains, definitely some gustier winds with these areas of low pressure and much more unsettled weather conditions around by then. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video and definitely hit the subscribe button and catch the next update. Wire protect you before and after the storm.